Justin Trudeau has a problem with facts, to put it mildly, but something really remarkable happened last week. A very well-known journalist was on a CBC show and finally called him out for the fact that over the last several weeks, he'll come out of Rideau Cottage, his house in Ottawa, answer a few questions to a few select reporters that are filled with stuff that's largely fact-free, and then have some nameless bureaucrat walk these statements or misinformation back later in the day. Now, this commentary, it was made by Paul Wells of Maclean's magazine, is remarkable because Paul also made a really good point. And the fact is that Canada's national broadcaster puts Justin Trudeau with these fact-free statements and his morning press conference on national TV every morning without really fact-checking him or pressing him for answers. So what ends up happening, as Paul will explain in this clip I'm about to show you, is that Justin Trudeau comes out and is like, don't worry, everything's fine. We're getting 100 bajillion doses of vaccines. That'll be carried live on CBC and other news networks throughout the day. Then at some point in the afternoon, some nameless bureaucrat is like, well, actually, not so much. But what the Canadian public gets is essentially misinformation. And this is a huge problem. I want to talk about this, but watch the clip, watch this CBC show, and watch Paul Wells address this problem.
I think on the list of things I think this government is screwing up, not publishing the contracts is pretty low on my list. Pretty high on my list is a prime minister who comes out and reassures Canadians in the morning, and then over the course of the day, the substance of his reassurance is walked back by other ministers or by the public service. He made claims about the AstraZeneca delivery this morning that were disowned before lunch by the public service. The Globe and Mail asked the embassy in Washington, has this government asked the Biden administration for some of the vaccine that they seem to be so good at producing? And nobody in this government will answer.
Yeah, the Prime Minister, we're told, misspoke when he said 20 million doses of AstraZeneca will be here by June. We're told that's a conflation of the combined 20 million Moderna and Pfizer that are coming by June, or a misstatement of the 2 million AstraZeneca they expect to get through the COVAX
The great thing is
agreement.
The misstatement is always reassuring and carried live on television by this government's most spectacular public relations asset. And then it is denied later by people you've never heard of, who aren't on camera. It's becoming a pattern.
On this issue, Paul is absolutely right. It is a pattern. I've noticed it. You guys know I'm the Shadow Minister for Health with the Conservative Party of Canada. And look, even if you don't vote Conservative, you should be concerned about the fact that the Prime Minister of Canada in the middle of the pandemic can't answer basic questions or might be willfully spreading misinformation about Canada's vaccine rollout. So the incident that was in question that Mr. Wells was referring to on the CBC clip that I just showed you happened when the Prime Minister, in one of his, what we call his morning shows, where he just comes out of Rideau Cottage and isn't really subject to any sort of scrutiny that's material, he was asked how many doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine are coming to Canada in a certain period of time. Watch these clips. So he was asked a specific question. He gave a completely bogus answer that I then had to follow up with in a committee with the procurement minister in the afternoon. Watch these clips.
I spoke with the CEO of AstraZeneca, Pascal Soriot, just a few days ago, and he very much assured me that we are on track to receiving the 20 million doses committed to by the end of June, I believe.
Today, the Prime Minister said 20 million doses of AstraZeneca would arrive by June, but then officials from Public Works said that the timeline was wrong. Can the Minister clarify by what date Canada will receive 20 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine?
Thank you so much for the question. And I refer back to our contracts for these doses. And we have deliveries of AstraZeneca arriving in Q2 and Q3 at the current time.
You can't. Thank you.
So that's pretty brutal. I mean, again, if you're watching this and you don't vote Conservative, fine. But you should be concerned about the fact that it's true. Trudeau comes out on something as important as vaccines and is he knowingly giving wrong information. And this hasn't just happened once. This happens day after day after day. And what gets covered in the national news is Trudeau's clip where he's spreading misinformation that we then have to waste time trying to correct. And I mean, this isn't just about politics, right? I mean, that the answer to that question, how many doses of this vaccine are we supposed to get over a certain period of time, has lives on the line. Provinces have to know that so that they can figure out their rollout plans, figure out who's going to get it in what order and under what circumstances. Healthcare workers need to know this information. So Trudeau just making this up and then us not being able to get answers at the health committee is a problem. It's not just me as a conservative finding this. The New Democratic health critic, the Bloc health critic, none of us can get answers. And the media needs to be pushing Trudeau on this. Now, again, with this being a pattern, this pattern of misinformation, this has been happening over the entire pandemic. The government comes out and rather than saying like, look, based on best available information, here's what we think, or here's the assumptions that we've made on these issues, and this is where we're going. They just come out and they're like, here's a bunch of garbage. We hope you'll believe it. Here's such a powerful example. A year ago, when we were pushing the federal government to close borders, they kind of suggested that it was quasi-xenophobic to do it. Watch Canada's health minister on borders a year ago.
That it's much easier to support people from a region that's experienced such an outbreak if we know where they're coming from. And the evidence says that when you shut down a border like that, it gets much harder to actually detect where people are coming from because people are determined to get into a country or return home, and they will find alternative routes to do so. Secondly, the long-term implications of shutting down borders is one, they're not very effective in controlling disease, as in fact, they're not effective at all.
You know, the Justin Trudeau Liberals could fill hours of clips of misinformation and jargon and dance around answers on vital questions related to ending the pandemic. It is just so frustrating for me as a legislator and as the, opposition shadow minister for health to not be able to get basic, honest answers from the Prime Minister on things like our vaccine procurement contracts or personal protective equipment or, what the government is going to do to make things better and give us some hope. Look, all Canadians of all political stripe, regardless of how you vote, everybody should be rising right now and demanding more and better from Justin Trudeau as it relates to how he's communicating to the public. This is not a time, for Trudeau to rely on his instinct to just be a very surface level politician. He needs to show that he's in control of the situation, that he can lead a team of people to get vaccines when everyone in the world is trying to get it. He clearly hasn't so far. He needs to show that he is fighting for, getting things back to normal, for removing limitations on Canadians while fighting for better public health outcomes. Those shouldn't be two things that aren't fought for together. All of this comes back to his misinformation. Paul Wells was exactly right in that clip on the CBC. The Canadian media and the Canadian public shouldn't be allowing Trudeau to just get away with coming out every morning saying a bunch of essentially crap and then having some faceless bureaucrat walk it back later in the day. That's morally bankrupt. But more importantly, it's not going to get us out of the pickle that we're in right now, putting it mildly. So, I'm going to continue to fight for these answers in venues like committee. I'm going to use all the tools that I have at my disposal as a parliamentarian, motions, order paper questions, all these technical things. I'm going to do everything I can to get answers and to raise awareness on the fact that we need to do better. But if Trudeau keeps coming out every morning and the Canadian public just keeps accepting, this is something that's okay, and the Canadian media doesn't push him a little harder, it is getting better, we're not going to get out of this anytime soon. And that's the reality. For me, I just think that it's about time that, Trudeau realizes that he can't keep asking us to sacrifice more. He has to do better, and he has to show some leadership. And certainly it's my job to push him to do that, which I'm going to continue to get back to work on right now. Please share this video. Please talk to people and ask them to demand honesty and transparency from the federal government so that we can show everybody in this country a little bit of hope and a way forward. Working hard for you in Calgary. Have a great day.